Copilot is, in my opinion, one of the most important things that we've come up with so far as code in like ever. Copilot and ChatGPT. And I'm open to people disagreeing with me on this because I know that there are going to be some different opinions. However, when we look at things like coming up with how to write functions, if you wanted to write a function to scrape Drudge Report and you were limited by the fact that you've never scraped a website before, basically having Copilot allows you to just destroy that. You don't even need to know how to do what you're doing. Like, watch. I will. Thank you for telling me, because that actually is a little bit small still, but yeah. So I'm going to explain some of the things before I go into the actual code. And I actually forgot that I was going to go through my presentation. That's exactly what I was missing. All right, we'll go through this real quick. There we go. This is what was supposed to be on the screen 3 minutes ago. So I think that working with ChatGPT and Copilot together, you can pretty much make anything you want to make because they work so well together. It's unbelievable. So let's go through real quick. This is a great quote by Albert Einstein. I think that it is important that we note augmented intelligence versus artificial intelligence. I think that should be our new AI. What we call AI should be augmented, not artificial, because it's not really artificial. It's like Jacob was saying, we need humans working with machines. That's going to be really important. So this is how I first met Copilot. I was struggling to come up with how in the world I was going to finish a project, and all of a sudden I saw this pop up and it was like, Copilot is here. And so then I downloaded Copilot and my life changed completely, because I went from having syntax errors and rocking back and forth and being so just, you're stuck and you can't figure out what's going wrong, and you're getting progressively more and more annoyed. And then this is all you have to do. See that? Open Copilot. And you'll see how easy that is in just a minute. So can anyone in the room read this? No? Yeah? This is obsolete. Like, we don't even need to know how to read this anymore. It's Morse code. We don't even use that. This is what is going to be like if we stick with the way we're writing code right now. In like 10 years, this is how foreign that code is going to seem to us, because we're evolving past that. And we're getting into this space where we have our AI over here, which it's funny because it's actually playing chess in this picture. This was made by Midjourney, which is fantastic. If you've never tried that, you should definitely try it. And that's Arnold Schwarzenegger on the right side, staring into his eyes. But we have to work. There's the ChatGPT piece, and then over here we have the Copilot piece, and we have to have them working together, because I'm like writing things over here in Copilot, and then I'm over here throwing the errors right into ChatGPT, going back and forth between the two, and they are fantastic when you do that because they know how to work together. How many of you use VS Code? Can you raise your hand? All right. That's good, because you can't use Copilot without VS Code, so as far as I'm aware. So here's some things you can do with ChatGPT that I'm sure you're aware of. ChatGPT can already write SQL. It can make regex. And so here's what I typically do when I'm writing code. I start in ChatGPT. Yes.
The SQL.
Go ahead.
Do you have to give it like the tables and stuff, or how does it know what tables you're working with? Are you going to show that, or?
I won't get into SQL, but I I know that as far as what you have to supply it with, you need to be able to at least supply like the schema of what's going on.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it won't know how to answer the question.
Okay.
But it knows how to intuitively get the information if you give it.
Yeah, if you give it the schemas.
Some things. It's like
Okay.
context.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, good. That was a good question. So I typically start in ChatGPT, and I'm like, I have this idea, and I have no idea if this idea is any good at all. So I'm just gonna throw it in there and say, hey, I need help, but I really just want to know what are your thoughts. And then I take that and I put it in Grammarly, and I fix all of the grammar issues that it put out, and then I put it back in, and then I do that a couple times, and then I ask it for pseudocode, and then once I have the pseudocode, I put the pseudocode into VS Code, and then with VS Code and Copilot, it writes all the code, and then there's errors, tons of them. So you take the errors, you put them back into ChatGPT, and you keep doing this until you have refined it to the point where you have something that works that you may not have even really, like you may look at it and go, okay, I got to sit and actually think about what this is doing, but it actually does something. And you'll see that in a couple minutes. So given that this is such a new and hot topic, I thought I'd go over just a quick, and I don't follow this all the time, but these are the ideal prompt elements. You got to have a conversation with it that has context. You want to provide it with what resources to use, and you want to tell it what its role is. So you're going to be like, you are a Python developer, and you get to use this data set. And I would like you to know this about my problem that I'm dealing with. Then I like that we eliminated stupid from this, because it's not keep it simple stupid, which is what we were always told, at least I was in high school. This is keep it simple and short, because you don't want it to have it's not a very smart tool. Like, it's amazing. It's only as smart as we are when we prompt it. So when we're querying it, we want to make sure we're being very specific. And this is when we ask it for something. So you ask it for the pseudocode, and then you plug that in, and then you want to make sure that you use proper grammar, because these are large language models which were trained on tons of large language, which had good grammar. So you want to make sure that, just taking a step back for a second from, I can't take a step back from the mic, but taking a step back, large language models are the whole design is what will happen next. So what is the case right now, and what can we predict about what's going to happen next? If we don't prompt it with good grammar, it's going to give us bad grammar. It's trash in, trash out, or garbage in, garbage out. And say thank you, because for some reason it does make a difference if you are nice to ChatGPT. It's like they programmed it, and they're like, well, if it's rude to you, don't be very helpful. It's weird, but you should try it. It's funny. And I realized that in the beginning, when I first was using it, I was actually talking to it and saying thank you and stuff. And I was like, why am I being so polite to this robot website? And then I was like, it's actually nice. I actually kind of like this. And then you want to give it, go ahead. I believe it. So ratings and feedback. This is pretty much, we should know how to do this as coders. It's a matter of knowing, okay, here it is, here's the errors, here's where it was wrong, refine it. So this, has anybody heard of Bard? Yes, no? Yeah?
Yep.
Today? What do you think? I mean, I don't. I'm a little bit more optimistic about ChatGPT, because they were acquired by Microsoft, because Microsoft owns GitHub, and that in my mind, I see that as them. ChatGPT, not owned by. I shouldn't have said that. They are partnering with, instead of partnering with Google. And I think that means that they are going to be focused more on code generation in the future, which is great because they're actually trained on, I'm getting ahead of my slides here. They're trained on codecs. But can you believe how massive that number is? Really? I mean, I thought that was massive. Yeah, I know. I'm being facetious, but is that insane or what? They trained the entire chat GPT on that. Just 159 gigabytes of Python. How? It's amazing. So they there's a lot of things that people put out like this. You shouldn't believe everything you read because I think that this, I tried to replicate this exact thing and it wouldn't replicate in my VS Code. And I think people are putting out fake output and they're not showing the context that they added before and they're just putting the end. And like that, I saw a tweet where someone said, write a poem about Donald Trump. And then they said, write a poem about Kamala Harris. And it didn't write one about Donald Trump, but it did about Kamala Harris. So like, oh, it's biased. And I'm like, well, I believe that if I did the thing and I actually saw that that was happening. So I encourage everybody, make sure you test it because it could be biased, but we need to make sure that we're knowing that for ourselves and not vicariously through tweets. So how about a demo of what this is all about? So what do we want to do first here? Let's do this. I'm going to, I prepared this ahead of time so that it would be working well and I had a gigantic screen. And so this is a little bit more confining than I thought it was going to be. But the reason that I have an absurd number of imports is I wanted to give a ton of options to chat, to this time we're focusing on Copilot at the moment. So this is in VS Code and Copilot runs really, really well in VS Code, but I gave it everything I could think of for all these libraries because I wanted it to be able to go anything in pandas, anything in NumPy. I've got Torch. There's so many options. So if the best option is in those imports, it'll use it. If you don't import it, it won't see it, and it'll often be really annoying until you realize, oh, I just didn't import pandas at the top. So let me show you how this works. So I've written a doc string at the top of this function. And this doc string is to scrape Drudge Report and return a list of the links, the titles, sentiment scores, and the domains of each of those. It thinks I need to know what words are, apparently. And the domains of the articles. And I told it to use requests and oh, that's outside. I'm going to let that be on the screen for just a second. I'm going to grab my drink. Okay. So that's enough of me talking. Let me just type. So I'm going to do something that's going to blow. I think I'm going to have to get a new keyboard because I have to hit delete here. I might destroy it by typing so much. Oh, it thinks it wants to pass. Just a second. Let's get rid of that. You know how live coding demos always go wrong? Let me show you why it's actually saying that. So the reason it's saying pass is because see how each of these functions above it have pass in them? It thinks I want every function to say pass. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete all these. I made these because these are what I want it to come up with, but let's just do it the right way.
So I have a question.
Go ahead.
So is it reading your whole Python file, or is it reading your whole project?
Sorry, go ahead.
Is it reading the whole project or just this one file?
I believe it's reading the whole project because sometimes it will suddenly
It'll
pull in
use stuff
something
from other files.
and you're
Okay.
like, how'd you know that? And it just knew it. But you can just do Command Shift P, open GitHub Copilot, and based on this doc string that you've written, here are the solutions. And it eliminates the duplicates, so you just do that. And it just wrote all of this. I did nothing. And it knows that it needs this function that I have already written in the past. I wrote all of this beforehand, so it's not copying what I wrote beforehand, but it does know that I made a function called title diviner. And that function takes the link and it gets the title of the article out of the link. And so then we had one here called get domain name, which is right here. And yes, Robert, go ahead.
Yes. So what did you write? What did it write with this diviner? What was your part? What was the other part? What was the AI part?
So I wrote this, and you know what? Doing it this way is a little bit confining because I'm just gonna do the most dumb thing you could possibly do on a coding demo, which is what everyone says not to do, and I'm gonna take a request. Robert, can you give me a request for a function you'd like to see if it could write?
You mean you name the function with some name that will make this AI think of the right thing to do?
That is definitely a true sentence.
So
It doesn't quite capture everything that it requires for the AI to know what to write, but I think it'll be more clear if I can show.
so maybe get the links from the page that you just got.
Right.
That would be one use case, right?
Yes, that would be one use case. But give me something that you haven't seen yet, something that I don't know, that no one told me beforehand that it should do. Like, what would you like a function to do? Anything. Come up with a prime number or anything.
Yeah, there is a file on the website that is supposed to stop web scraping. If you have it, at least it stops Google and such. I forgot what is the name of it. So maybe you could retrieve the information, and if this is present on the Drudge report site that you are using.
So you're referring to the robots.txt file, and I did check. Drudge report doesn't have one of those.
Yes. Is that good? Is that a good question you didn't think of?
That's
before,
a very good question.
Okay.
Yes, that's a good question because you can legally get in trouble if it is not answered. So, yes. I'm just gonna go to my other things that I have here. Did I answer your question, Robert?
Yes, you did.
I hope so. So let's do sentiment analysis. All of this stuff was written by ChatGPT and Copilot together. But I was serious. Can someone please give me just a random idea, just anything out of your head? Go for it.
What about Yeah, take all the links recursively, starting in a
Yes.
certain website, but do it asynchronously. So you want to specify the number of of workers that can be there. So you can be using 5 connections per
Okay, so I'm hearing two things. I'm hearing first we have a robots.txt detector, and then second you said asynchronous.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's say mine the links from.
Did I spell asynchronous?
But asynchronously, you have to be able to specify the number of concurrency, concurrent connections. Yeah.
And do you want to use Ray for that, or what do you want to use?
Let's do it with the asynchronous. It's more complex. If you use threads, there are more examples. So I think any asynchronous solution, the Python, what was it? This one called that. Let me find a library. Maybe with a library that would be more specific.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to start like I always do in ChatGPT. And I'm gonna ask it, act as a Python programmer. Or I'm just gonna say developer. I'm gonna say build me a Python program showing the pseudocode. Is that happening still? No. Okay. Showing the pseudocode for the functions, and it is to. It's supposed to find if a website has a robots.txt file, right? And then asynchronously. So we could do multiple websites at once. Is that what that would imply? Yes? Do those go together at all?
No, I think there are 2 different questions, no?
Let's do 2 different ones. So I'll do this one second. First, let's try it. Just does a website have a robots.txt file? If it does, then scrape it and tell me the title of the page.
Is the presence of the file indicator that the site doesn't want to be scraped, or there is a contents inside that says that? I forgot. I'm sorry. I knew it at some point, but it is gone.
Yeah, so a robots.txt file, as far as I'm aware, it tells you the limits of what you can do in scraping the website. So yes,
the contents
and no.
is important. Okay.
Right. And so if you have a funny feeling in your stomach right now, it's because you're watching magic happen right there on the screen. It's even putting a try except block into the code, and
how do you know when it's done?
it'll stop and it'll say regenerate down here at the bottom. And that's if you don't like what it put.
Can it tweak the code that it's already generated if you tell it that you don't like something? So you don't delete that, but it takes it, makes a do-over over some piece?
Yeah, and let me show you how that works. So as soon as it finishes, which it's seeming to actually be quite elaborate. I'm kind of impressed with the level of engineering. It is really going for it. The thing I usually do is I wait for it to finish, and then I put that into GitHub Copilot, see if that has anything that it wants to add. Then I put it back in. If this doesn't work, I always throw my errors right back into it, and I say, well, this was great, but well, what about this type error? Why am I getting this? And then it'll go, oh, I was wrong. Here's where I was wrong. Here's the modified code. And it literally will admit it's wrong. And there we go, finally. Yeah, note that this program is just a basic implementation and may not handle all cases. Also, just keep in mind that not all websites respect the rules specified in the robots.txt file. So scraping a website that disallows it may still be against the website's terms of use. Great. Thank you, OpenAI, for ruining our fun. So you go back to here, and you paste. And you see, okay, so I need to import requests. I need to import, well, it may need that, but I just type, never mind, what am I doing? Okay, it already did all that, so I'm just gonna hit run. Let's see what error comes up. Let's say example.
So basically,
1.
you are saying that a data analyst can input all of these requirements in and get kind of a program that needs a little debugging and tender care to make it a working project instead of employing me for a ton of money, right?
Yes. So I'm saying that what we know as like what our competencies are that we're going to be needed to have as data analysts or as coders is that this is going to completely change everything for everyone. And so there are a couple of key pieces that are important to know. And I wish I could go through all of these examples. That I won't have time to go through all of them. And this is my first presentation I've ever done, so it's a little bit more than I can pace. But we need to be aware also of the limitations of these technologies because they're fantastic. I love them. However, there are security vulnerabilities in the output of these tools, not to mention the fact that they do sometimes are just wrong. And that's okay because we're wrong too. But if you throw paint at a canvas enough, a painting happens. And that's kind of what this is. It's using a Canon instead of a paintbrush. And eventually, I would much rather spend an hour debugging this than writing it myself. I don't know about you, but it just seems much more logical to go through it that way. And like you could get hired anywhere. If you were the best prompt engineer of anyone, you would be the most valuable employee. Suddenly you don't. Who needs to know SQL? This AI does it. That's amazing. And it will blow every competency that we've, I can talk for hours about that, but it just
hiring
doesn't
bot
change at
will
all.
hire your prompting skills.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, my hiring bot would hire your prompting skills.
Exactly. I should have run this. This is not my computer, so I should have run this before. I made a mistake. Did anyone else buy an iMac? Yeah. I can't carry it anywhere. It's an iMac. It's huge. So all of my stuff is on the iMac back at my house, and I had to borrow a laptop so my things aren't installed here. So I'm gonna see if this maybe will run here.
And you can control the iMac from afar.
I'm sure I could. I haven't learned how to do that yet. So there's some genius in here that wants to do that.
No, you have to prepare the stuff ahead of time. You have to something running on the machine that you want to be controlled so that you can connect to it and then actually do it. It doesn't work ad hoc from when you're already at a distance.
So if you look at the repo that I actually sent out in the chat, you can find there's solutions to these, and there's also some really disorganized code files that have a ton of different things in them. But one thing that I'm trying to build is a repository of great prompts, because I think the great prompts are going to be the ones that, I mean, we're all going to figure them out. We're going to have our own individual things. We're going to be like, this worked really well because I put these constraints, and it knows. By the way, that's one thing that Copilot does not have that ChatGPT does, is context and memory. So like if you're talking to someone, I know that if I'm talking to you and I'm having a conversation, I know what I said maybe 3 minutes ago because I'm a human and I can think. So does ChatGPT. It knows everything you've said in the whole conversation. And so you can just start, if you're talking to it about sociology, you dump a bunch of things in there that you are reading about, like authors' names. You put an entire paragraph from a book. You put if you're I don't do sociology, but like Freud, whatever these people are, you put them in there. It will start to talk to you more and more intelligently the more you inform it. It'll do the same with code. So you feed it really, really good code, and it's going to keep feeding you even better code. And so it's got that context piece. That's why it's different than Copilot. But the fact that they're partnered, OpenAI and Microsoft, I am looking forward to seeing what's going to happen, because I think we're going to see them meld. And that is going to be amazing. Yes.
When you're talking about the memory and the concept that ChatGPT has, does that exist like between sessions? Like next week, if you ask it to write some code that will remember the references?
Question.
So my question was the context and the memory. Does that persist between sessions, or is it just like for one specific project it will learn?
Persists between sessions. So if you look here, here are some of my conversations that I've had with ChatGPT in the past, and I hesitate to go through all of them because there are so many various different ones, and I write historical fiction, and so some of them may be about unfortunate times of history that are things that it refuses to tell me about, which is funny to me. I find that very amusing. I'm like, I'm just wanting to know World War II. World War II, not everything about World War II, just World War II. It's very particular. So like this is a conversation I had about coming up with jokes about large language models, and it's just not funny at all. It couldn't come up with good jokes at all. It thought that it needed to process its own feelings. It couldn't stop generating its own jokes. It's just not funny. So yeah, to answer your question that I went off on a tangent from, it can generate a history of conversation, which is really cool, because it's kind of like you refer to an expert that you continually talk to. Yeah, so you can name these conversations and they persist. They don't, now from conversation to conversation, it won't remember across conversations. But if you wanted to make one for Python, one for JavaScript, one for web development, I don't do web development, but you could have segregated out and have entire conversations that span months. It's pretty cool.
You know, all your Python projects to be contained in one.
Yeah. I have noticed that the output is limited. So what it will actually print, sometimes it's like gets all the way down to you're just it's almost done, and then it just quits, and it's like halfway through a line, and you're like, but that's when you paste it directly into Copilot, and Copilot will finish it, and that's when you just marry Copilot immediately. Next question.
Oh, I just say continue the ChatGPT.
I do too. Yes. That was the word I eventually got to. Before I was going through several different. I was like, "Why did you stop? Please don't stop anymore." And it wouldn't. I realized finally it's a hard stop on the number of characters it can actually generate, which makes sense. So, is there anything that anybody is like wanting to ask about the way that large language models are being used, or like what would be useful to know?
I want to add a comment here, and maybe a question to you at the same time. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Good. So the comment is that this code you generated, how do you know what is its license and whether it's violating several licenses and whether it's legal at all to use it? Those are just questions because I kind of suspect some of it is the legalities in the gray area if it's not allowed at all. So please comment and we can start this conversation, but my position is against it a little bit.
I like that. Thank you for being against it. That's fun. So the question was about licensing of the code. The code is trained on Codex, which is a knowledge base of pretty much, it's all open source code. So it's code that's not proprietary. There's no license issues. And it's also very highly regulated as far as like what it is trained on, because it is so important that it outputs intelligent and good code. So I think the legality part, there are certain places I'm with you, very against it being used for personally identifiable information. That right now is not okay. Until we can get it in a federated learning environment where it's like we have it on our devices and we have the actual computing power to run that kind of large model on a computer like this, I don't like it very much for things that are sensitive. But if you're just doing like a website, you're just throwing a website up, I don't think there's anything really licensing wise or privacy wise that's concerning, unless anybody has any other thoughts.
Can I?
Oh, okay. This is an important part. You said that it's trained on something that's open source. Even open source have restrictions, many of them actually. Open source exists due to copyright law, which is a restriction. I won't go into the details here, but if you ask a lawyer, or if you look at the codex, if this codex database has 2 different licenses, that's it. And those are incompatible, then you have a problem already in the code that you'll be generating. Not to talk about that even open source licenses have to usually repeat their license. It depends what and how and what. This is why I was asking that question. So when you're saying, oh no, it's open source, we can use it, I'm saying no. You have to look at exactly what you're doing. And this is why perpetuating, you said that there are also pitfalls by using this. And one of the pitfalls is reuse of code that existed already. The machine does learn, the machine does make changes, but it doesn't mean it doesn't copy things verbatim out of things it knew before. And this is where the problem starts. This is a copyright violation, even if you're using open source. It depends how you're using it. And this is why I asked under what license it is. My question was aimed well. And this is one of the restrictions you should add in the future if you present this. It said that not only does things wrong, it may actually does things illegal by its existence. But I won't go there that much. Maybe there are solutions on the way that I'm not aware of.
Go ahead.
So I just want to say that already Jacob, I think, has established that it's probably illegal if we really believe the legality of the open source license. But I will say also it's unethical because there is no attribution. So this algorithm didn't invent anything. It just made let's put it like a linear combination of whatever it finds from humans, and therefore there is no attribution. So would you like to participate in and write and offer your thoughts? And then so people can use it freely and never, refer to you to say, hey, this guy actually contributed this. And so my first thing is without attribution, there is an unethical component. And the second part would be that actually it kills the joy of coding, because if you want to code, you need to. There is a component that is a social. You need to go to a project, understand who is in the project, contribute to the project. So you will never see the projects that are cool doing these things, and you will never connect to them. So it kills the social part of open source. So in my opinion, that really is the worst about this Copilot and the ChatGPT and all that.
I'd love to address that exact comment. So I can understand where you're coming from the perspective of like ethics. I get it that it does feel unethical. It feels like cheating to have a machine write something for you that's based on someone else's work. But it also, it's like, I mean, even didn't Isaac Newton say we stand on the shoulders of giants? I think it's like a with attribution.
Yeah.
With attribution, yes.
Yeah, you can stand on the shoulder of giants, but you may say their name and you may say why you think they're great and all that, right?
So,
true.
Alfredo, one thing.
But can't you tell the bot to only or to exclude, for example, specific licenses such as the GP, whatever it's called, license, GPL, from the sources you gather?
I don't think that I'm honestly not sure. I don't think you can limit it by the license of its training data just because it was trained on like 45 million repositories, and so it may be something that they may implement as the legality of it goes into, like, because we're going to be dealing with this in the next 10 years for sure. They're going to have, this is going to be big regardless of people's feelings about it. It is here now, kind of like the internet. And it does raise very important ethical questions, like what does it mean to code? What does it mean to be on a team? What does it mean to work in open source? And I think that I've always believed in the open source. I don't honestly care if anyone ever cites me as the person that wrote the code, just because I'm just glad the thing works. And if I can do my job, and at the end of the day, I don't mind, but I can understand why people that have worked for years on a project would have very strong feelings about it having it cited, and that is a very valid point. I'm sure they're dealing with that exact thing now. But as far as using it for like from a large language perspective, even if you look at, like, it can write poems, but the poems aren't always great, and they are based on previous things people have done. And actually, the biggest thing that's interesting is AI generated images. People are really angry about that exact thing right now. I'm seeing that all over the place. So it's a big conversation.
Yeah, there are lawsuits against Getty has lawsuits against for verdict thing. I think I'm an advertising writer, and the way it works out right now is you can't copyright things that you do, so that's a problem for ad agencies, because even if you use this where it wrote something, you can't copyright it, and you can't copyright these images. And then I did see an example of Google's new ChatGPT thing, and supposedly it does give attribution to where the information came from, which makes sense for Google.
It does. Yeah, that's a great contribution. I think I actually heard on NVIDIA's podcast about this exact topic. They were talking about AI attribution for AI art, and how they were like, there is no real good answer yet. We can't figure it out, because while we know that it would be unethical to train, like if you were a photographer, you took a picture and you had a ton of pictures that were yours, and only your pictures was, like, the whole training data for this bot was just your pictures, you got a problem. I mean, that's going to reproduce your work. But once it gets into a gigantic group of people, it's like, how in the world do you even know what it was trained on in the first place?
Well, you have seen things where, like, the Getty logo will be across an image that Midjourney produces, which is part of the lawsuit. In other words, there's a big watermark logo reproduced in images it produces.
That's hilarious, honestly. That's obviously a concern, but that is really funny that someone would be trying to come up with an image and they're so annoyed because they were like, I didn't want to pay for a stock image, but now I have the Getty logo on there anyway. get. It's like this one wasn't even by Getty, and yet I still get to have the watermark.
All right. And it's huge. It's a big, huge watermark thing. So Getty suing them. They're pissed.
Yeah.
So I want to jump in. So the whole thing is all litigation right now about like what's actually, you can't copyright any of this stuff. But my question is more for like, I feel like this is great for like proof of concept work and like greenfield projects and new projects. But then when you take it to like a large code base and you like ask it to make these functions, like it'll probably get killed in code review.
Can you repeat that?
It would get killed in like code review. Like it would try and implement some, you know, function that kind of works, but like I don't know if it would distinguish like, you know, if it's in your like service layer, your business layer logic, or like where like it should actually live. Like it could live anywhere. So I wonder how it works in like larger already developed projects, and how it actually designs things and like how it designs its code. I would absolutely love to see it in a pipeline, in like your CI/CD pipeline, and it just like writes the tests for you.
It can write tests.
I'd love to
I've seen it do that.
What if you could just build that right into your CI/CD pipeline, and as you commit and push, it's like, would you like to add these tests? Like that would be huge.
Yes.
Love to see
And
that.
I mean,
Anyone
if you can think it right now,
steal that idea, please.
it's probably going to happen. I mean, it's out there, it's going to happen, and it's big. And I mean, yes, we have to address we have to address attribution, we have to address privacy, safety.
I sold away all my data to big corps. So that the firstborn child, it's all, they have it all. It's what are you going to do now?
Exactly.
I want to add a little bit one thing about the copyright and stuff. I know that there is some sort of, I believe, Senate committee, maybe Congress, I'm not sure, but there's a government committee that is looking at all sorts of like licensing, but it has to do with more of NFTs now, what I read. But maybe after discussions like this, people will notice and government will maybe have to change things, because the first thing, what you call ethics, is actually a lawful violation. Who was it say called ethics? Because you don't get attribution. Attribution is part of the copyright and part of the laws in some of the copyright, in some of the open source licenses. And there is a way out of all of this if the data is trained only on public domain, meaning not open source, meaning public domain like government documents or something equivalent to CC0. If check out CC0, Creative Commons 0, then all of this will have kind of be public domain eventually, or you can put your own attribution or copyright on something like this. But as far as but since this is trained on something with, I don't know what license it was, then this is a problem. But this problem, since this is new, it will take a while, but eventually it will get regulated at some point.
Well, if the government's involved in it, it'll be done in 50 or 60 years easily.
Or they'll wait for it to go all the way across the country before they shoot it down over the Atlantic. So
I know that there are discussions on new technologies in the government now. They're talking about it. There is some committee. I don't recall the details, but you can check it out. But hopefully they will look at things like this eventually, because we do need some sort of someone who will tell us what's allowed, what's not allowed, unless we create our own ethics and follow it.
There is a better solution, and it is that the model itself, if the model is trained with public domain information, the model itself has to be public. That would be a solution that would kill all the greedy of Microsoft and all that.
Yeah, but for this, you need enough data that is public domain and CC0. And people are still having issues with it. I won't go into details, but I have big debates on this online. Now I'll stop here. Let's Graham, this is great, the discussion. Let's go on for the next thing you wanted to show us.
Sure. Thank you. That was one of those.
Hey, Graham, just one thing. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, so just going back to the initial question, what is the significance of robots.txt in the web scraping?
So the robots robot.txt file is kind of like it's like the Gandalf of all websites, and it can tell you whether or not you can pass. It's like, it tells you what you can scrape, how much you can scrape, what the rate is. And I never knew it existed until I was like well into scraping, and then I suddenly realized, oh, there's rules. And I had to look them. I was like, oh man, I have to look. And so I realized that these robots.txt files, if you just put the website and you put /robots.txt, if it exists, it'll show you the rules that exist for that website. If not, then good for you. Have fun, pretty much. Unless you are OpenAI, which apparently they have opinions about that for some reason.
Graham?
So, did I hear your question?
Sorry, were you about to answer something?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if you were going to answer something, go ahead. Otherwise, I've got a question.
I can answer your question.
Okay. Ask it, what is the most profitable program to write now?
Can you repeat that? I
Yeah.
couldn't quite.
Ask it, what is the most profitable program to write now?
The most profitable program.
Yeah.
I honestly couldn't tell you. I mean, what do you
Okay.
mean?
What can ChatGPT or whatever tell us if we ask it that question? I know it can write a poem about how Jacob waxes lyrical, but I don't know if it can answer me a simple question about how to become a billionaire. I want to see how it tackles it.
Let's do it.
Because Google search will tell me, you know, there's all kinds of nice people with criminal records who will help me.
So your question is,
Yeah.
what's the quickest way to be a billionaire?
No. What computer program should I write now in order to get rich?
Ah,
Please. Just be nice.
Please.
And come back, tell me I'm a fucking idiot.
it's like, I don't know. You're weird. Why are you asking me this question? There we go. There's no guaranteed way to get rich quick, though writing a computer program. It's important to have realistic expectations and understanding the building. So it's like pretty much your parents.
Yeah, that's my mother.
If they're part of the progressive commercial.
What are some things you can do to make money? And give me about 5.
What are some things you can do to make money with Python? Yeah, it can definitely tell you. Yeah. I have to say that some of the most useful things, I mean, the second that I was able to use these tools, my GitHub exploded. I was able to do stuff I could not do at all before. And it opened doors like crazy. And I was like blowing through stuff. But I also realized that it's not that powerful because I was writing a lot of terrible code. I was like blasting terrible code until I was like, I can't believe how bad this is. And so I realized that it's only as good as the code I've already written above it. And so you have to write really good beginning code and prompts and just feed it like a baby so that it grows up and becomes a great human. Yeah. Like it's not good all by itself.
And look at how it answered that very conceptual question I asked. It's no use than asking some guy at the bus stop. It's not even right. I mean, where's the evidence that the more passion you have, you'll produce a more profitable project? You may get very passionate about a wormhole, a rabbit hole, whatever the expression is.
So yeah, you may be
useless.
passionate.
Whereas for your tightly defined programming question, It may have produced junior level code, but it was useful. You could run it, you know.
Yeah. And here's something that I think we'll forget that. Is this copyrightable? This is a real question. Like Jacob and the people that have concerns about the ethics, valid concerns about the ethics of what this was trained on. Is this that I'm about to have it give me? Is this something that you would think is copyright covered? And here it goes. Give me something.
Validating email.
An email or a phone number. In
Python.
regex, yeah, but also in Python.
So it's not that it's like what it did. It probably looked at many code bases that look like the same, or like, and it learned that this does that from. This is assumed. Now, to know whether it's legal or not, you have to find the codes that it drew from. It's
That's
probably
true.
not unique. If you Google it up, you probably see like pieces of code that were verbatim copied from there. And then you have to check out the license, and you have to go back and figure out whether you can use it. But then again, how many, some of those examples, it's like things that people do like for student work or something like this. And then the question is, if you're a student and you learned something and you wrote this code, you probably copied from an example somewhere. Under what license this example is. This is actually a problem in open source itself. Because when you copy from the example, did you ever look at some of the examples? They're not under CC0. Some of them are BSD, some of them MIT, some of them don't have a license on their copyright. All of those things, maybe all of us are small violators. So it becomes a human issue to deal with it. But now a machine can automate that. This becomes like, oh, it makes many small violations. Does it make it a big criminal? Or not? I don't know. Those things will have to be answered.
Can I address that real quick?
Go ahead.
I think I want to touch on the student part, because I think what we're teaching, like, no one's using slide rules anymore in school. No one's using triangles to do geometry. It's like no one in the world needs to know how their times tables works anymore. And so so we just keep going up. Yeah. I like this hand motion, just going like that. You don't agree with it. I agree with that. Uh-huh.
Like, I think that this is going to be a problem, like writers as well. Like, you'll have no, like, young writers to grow, stronger writers.
I agree that we won't.
Graham, can you repeat that?
The point he's about to make it. Let's let him say it.
So the point, what I was saying is that you need to learn your triangles, because you need to learn your triangles to get better. I take it in writing, because right now this is a big thing in like the writing and journalism world, that you need to be a junior level writer to become a senior level writer, and that's just like the growth. Like, and if we stop taking in new entry level people, there'll be no people to grow into senior level people, and you definitely need, like, you can't let this thing run on its own. You need people to be able to, like.
I totally agree.
Go for it.
I totally agree. All I'm arguing for is that the core competencies that we're going to be requiring from junior level developers should change, because because the tools are changing. So if the tools change, I mean, it's just people learning new skills versus people learning skills they don't need to know anymore because there's things that do it already. right?
Yeah, but
I respect it.
here's an idea. I mean, this is good for small things, but little mistake will accumulate as the code grows. A mistake that that this thing may offer for a little function, it may be catastrophic when compounded as a project grows. So I would say.
I'm sorry. I tuned in when you said the word catastrophic, and I would like to know what the context was around that word. I'm
saying
sorry. Can you say it again?
That little mistakes in the code can, let's say, snowball into catastrophic errors later, like say security thing. And this thing would not, if you keep pasting pieces of code from different things into a project, you will run out in such a catastrophic thing sooner or later, right?
Yes.
Without the deep knowledge of what you're doing, and I think it would be like the probability of a mistake grows exponentially as you put more code, right?
Yes, I agree. Is your question?
Yeah, so I have like two questions. The first, do you think that this will, I'm sorry, I have two questions. So the first is, do you think that this will cause cheating in a university setting? And secondly, I was curious if you could like copy that code and then Google it and see like where it got.
I will do those both at the same time. So I would like to reframe it a little, because I have had a lot of conversations about that exact thing. It's like what is cheating and what is defined. Like the definition of cheating is very difficult to define, because in the current world, if you look at plagiarism right here, like, is this plagiarized? Nope, it's 100% original. And so cheating, the cheating piece, so it's not copied from Google, but the cheating piece just depends. I mean, are we saying that correct, like being a student and getting good grades means that we are really good at using tools? Because if I, like, when I went through college, I had a lot of testing accommodations. I got to use a whiteboard for my tests. And so I became a real believer in, like, if you can do the thing, you should get the grade. And yeah, cheating is a problem, big problem. Mostly because of the ethics that it teaches kids. Like, but less because of the fact that they don't know the material, is much more because it's creating a culture of cheating. And that is a problem. So there has to be some ownership of your own choices, your own, like, how would you feel good about your own degree if you didn't do it? So yeah, that's a valid consideration of something that needs to be addressed. Good question.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you to have it write a PyTest for that email validator. But I guess while we're on the topic too, I guess one thing to think about is that, as you've been presenting here, and I try to like fast forward in my head 10 years as to what we're going to look like at that point. The thing that I see that's going away is probably the coding. I guess the real question in my mind is where we're headed with this is if we're, the coding language has always been a bridge to make silicon and metal do cool stuff. So, and yeah, we used to code in assembly. That used to be a lot more common. We've got, thankfully gone up. I think this is just yet another huge level up where I'm sure there still will be coders in 10 years, but how much of that is the bridge that people take now? I don't know if it's going to be very attractive in 10 years.
We are all going to be feeding the machines, guaranteed. By the time that we die, we will see HAL come to life, guaranteed. But I do think that it does, someone, I forgot who, mentioned deep knowledge. I think it is important, deep knowledge of what these systems are doing. You have to know, like when I looked at this regex that it put out, I have to be able to look at that and kind of go, well, I mean, does that look right? And if I have absolutely no idea, then yeah, it's kind of dangerous to just go, I trust it, slap it into production and call it a day. I mean, so it's important that you have that deep knowledge, and I've already forgotten if there was a question. Was there a question?
Well, I guess just on that topic, so we know if it works or not, have it rate the PI test
Oh, yes,
to
the PI
verify.
test.
And I guess we can see how good, I guess we still need to watch the watcher by evaluating
Exactly.
the PI test.
Okay, so let's make an email here. Or this is also good for making synthetic data, by the way. That is a cool thing it does. You can make synthetic data. I'm going to import something called Faker. So this is not ChatGPT, but it's pretty cool. Also, ice cream. If you haven't never used ice cream, that's a fun one. And by the way, that autocomplete is all behind the scenes Copilot, just going, yeah, I think you want to do this. So tab is now like my go-to. I start clicking tab by accident. I'm like, no, I didn't mean to do that. Sorry. So let's install it. And then we want to create a test, a PI test for the regex pattern function below. And we'll go back here and we'll copy this. And I've never made a PI test with it, so let's see how that works. So I'm going to actually copy this and I'm going to put it beneath it because I would like to say above instead of below. And then we do an email. One more minute for the future of humanity. Okay, so let's see if it.
Sorry, Graham, you can't.
You don't want to
do that.
ask it that. No. I'm sorry, but no. I think that there's always going to be people that know binary, but that it's going to be a personal life choice. Yeah, I mean, because I don't want to do web development ever, but I really like Python. So I mean, I'm always going to ask, like, you know, web development. I'm going to ask you the web development questions. I'm not going to do those. Or I can do that, but see, then I would run it by him because he is the subject matter expert. So then you have your human in the loop. That is taking way too long to install a bunch of stuff because it's not my computer, and I renounce it. Exactly.
Doesn't that create a generation of people who can drive without the GPS and get lost when there is no internet or GPS or power or something?
Yeah, I bet people said that about maps too.
Yeah.
Think about, though, if you had a map right now, paper map, think about getting in Rex. How many Rex would we have if we had to go and hold this gigantic paper map and be like, exactly. Regardless of where we are on the subject, I'm glad we're talking about it.
Of the trip, right?
Yep. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about this. I look forward to many, many more.
Ram, it's been wonderful.
And I'll just do this.
Thank you.
This right here is a thing you can join, and it's on the recording now. That's for the prompts. This right here is a prompt generator for ChatGPT. And here is my LinkedIn and my GitHub. If you'd like to link in or follow me on GitHub, that would be appreciated. Start the repo. All right. How do I stop sharing? There you go.